We're live. All right. What is going on, y'all? It is the Caveman back at it again with the Cave every Monday night at 9:30 p.m. Eastern. You guys know what we do around here. I have one guest on each and every week, and I've been having a blast doing so. This is the 5th episode of the Cave. This week, I got my man Hansel from, was just talking to him. Funny enough, I was just actually sitting in the wrong backstage for StreamYard, and I'm like, where is he at? And turns out I was actually in the complete wrong StreamYard. So I was the one that was actually missing for my own show. But Hansel, like I mentioned, I was just telling him real quick, in the 30 seconds we got to talk that, I saw his content through Twitter. He does a lot of writing for, Buffalo Bills Reddit. He does writing for BillsIsh.com. This guy's very, very active. He's a great follow on Twitter. And before we get into any more of a breakdown, I'm going to bring him in and let him introduce himself as well. Hansel, thank you for joining me tonight, man. It's going to be a blast tonight.
Hey, yeah, appreciate it. Always psyched to talk Bills on any live show, any podcast, anything. Like, it's just talking football is awesome. I love it.
Oh, yeah. We're going to have a very good time. I got segments laid out for us that we're going to be able to have plenty of conversation, and we definitely will not be short of any conversation at all. But how we do things around here, first, we're going to start with the guest spotlight, of course, and that's kind of what I started things off with. Hansel, as I mentioned, I found him through Twitter. Make sure you go finding him on Twitter at Huber Hansen. He's hosted the Process on Tap podcast. He's a writer, like I mentioned, for Buffalo Bills Reddit. He also writes for BillsIsh.com. And if there's any other, anything else you want to add to that, tell the people where they can find you.
Yeah, I mean, I do a little bit of everything. So I'm from the Albany area, like capital New York. I actually help run a Bills backers bar here at McGeary's Pub. BillsIsh.com, it's my website that I created. On it, I created the Bills version of Wordle. It's called Hurdle, so you can find that there. Yeah, I mean, I'm all over the place, I think. I just any content I can create, anything I can do, I'm down to soak it up, so.
Absolutely, man. And I'm very excited that you have joined me tonight. So we're going to just hop right into things here, man. So usually the next thing right after the guest spotlight, we're going to talk about some recent news that has gone down. And it seems like each and every Monday, the NFL spoon feeds me just enough content to talk about when it comes to recent events. So today we had a couple things go down. The first thing was James Bradberry was released by the New York Giants. And understandably, we did adjust the cornerback position in the first round of the NFL draft. Do you think James Bradberry is still on the Bills' radar going into the season?
I don't. I actually was all over him before the draft, right? Like bringing in that vet option with Trey still hurt and maybe not ready to play the start of the season. But then when we drafted Elam in the first, like I just don't know how, he's going to demand 10 million plus. I just can't see the Bills fitting that in the cap. I'd still like him. Like if the Bills find a way to sign him, that's great. Like to be 3 deep with professional caliber players plus Dane Jackson, Teron Johnson, like I'd be fine with signing him. I just don't see it happening.
Yeah, and I'm kind of pretty much on the same boat. I'm not going to sit here and tell you that we need him at all. But, I mean, adding James Bradberry across from Trey White, and then you got Kyrie Elam that's able to, learn from 2 veteran corners like that, and 2 of the best at that in the NFL at the moment. So that would probably make one of the best secondaries in the NFL. I would say over the last, probably 5 years or so at least. I mean, that would be – we're not Legion of Boom material, but I think it'd be, up there in the sense that it would be quite a dominant secondary. But it's always fun to think and dream, but I don't think it's something we necessarily need at the end of the day. And, before the draft, like you mentioned, I was also all over a guy like James Bradberry. I was somewhat entertaining the idea of like a Stephon Gilmore as well, but I wasn't too much on board with that. But anything to fill that position, I'm glad we went out and did it in the first round of the draft. But on that note, was there anything specific other than corner that maybe you wanted in the first round?
No, I mean, the big debate on Twitter, right, was running back. Like there was a lot of talk of Breece Hall in round 1. I was a anti-running back in round 1. That's not all the time. It's just specifically this year. Like you go year by year with that. But looking at the Bills roster, I wanted to fill that one hole that was remaining, and that was cornerback. Like if the Bills left round 1 and round 2 without a cornerback, then I don't think that they had a successful draft. So for them in round 1, not only to draft Elam, but also go up and get him, it seems to kind of validate the people that said, hey, go fill that hole. And that's exactly what they did. And then later in the draft, they filled hole 2 for me, which is punter, draft and punt god. So I was actually stoked about that. I know some people weren't, think it's a waste of a pick to go for a punter, but he's special. So I'm stoked for him too.
Yeah, as am I. And I was kind of shocked to see that he wasn't. And I didn't watch day 3 of the draft. I was,
Mm,
doing whatever on Saturday. But when I found out that Punt God wasn't actually the first punter taken off the board, in hindsight, I guess it made sense because he did have the least amount of experience, probably out of most of the punters. But still, just seeing how good he was in his final season in college, I guess it was still kind of shocking that he wasn't the first off the
yeah.
board.
Yeah, I mean, what I think people have alluded to is the holding, and that's become a
Yeah.
massive thing. Where the other two punters have holding experience, they're more traditional punters, like not just try to kick the snot out of the football, which is what he is. I mean, he will bomb that football 80 yards and not think twice about it, run down and try to lay someone out, which I love. But he has to learn how to hold, because if he can't hold, I don't know how he kind of sticks with this team. From all like kind of news and clips that we've seen so far, though, that's what he's doing. He's working on that, and as long as he can become an adequate holder of the football, which I assume he's going to be able to do, he should kick Matt Hawk right off that roster pretty quick.
Yeah, and I like to think so as well. And I know, funny enough, I actually kicked in high school. I don't know what the what holding was like. I was just a soccer player. The football team
Yeah.
needed somebody. I went and kicked. And the holding position actually was like the biggest thing that was holding at least the extra point unit back. We didn't kick many field goals, but holding is not easy. So it's definitely something that becomes a craft that you have to work at like every single day to be able to just get that fluid motion down.
Yeah.
I mean, people take that kind of stuff for granted. Everybody sees it happen every single Sunday, probably 15 or 16 times, over each hour, if you have red zone or something like that, and everybody just takes it for granted. But it's certainly not a part of the game that is easy by any stretch of the imagination. So hopefully he's able to get that down, because I don't know if I want to see another season of Matt Hawk.
No.
He definitely had us holding our breath a little bit more than we'd like to admit. But let's move on. The second thing, once again, this is still, and then I know I kind of talked to you about it. You asked me if the hot take that you wanted to have was a Bills or NFL hot take. This still is an NFL show primarily, but there's going to be a lot of Bills sprinkled in on top of it as well. The other news that we heard was week 2, the Bills will be hosting the Titans on Monday Night Football. Do you think it's bad to have, if hypothetically the first week is also at home, do you think it's bad to have home games in a row early in the season?
Yeah, so actually I tweeted this out earlier too, right? Just there was the whole thing with the email, the way it was worded, they were kind of insinuating, or people believed, that we were going to have back-to-back home games. That's since kind of been refuted, I believe. But who knows? My thing with having back-to-back home games to start the season is you got to start hot, and everyone knows that week 1's just kind of a cluster. Like it doesn't really make sense. If you look at the Bills game against the Steelers last year, like if that game happens week 7, week 8, the Bills blow them out of the water. But because it was week 1, there were some kinks that had to get worked out that weren't ready. My concern when you have two home games back to back, and presumably important ones, like let's say week 1's the Dolphins and week 2 is the Titans, those two could both play a factor in, playoff standings come the end of the season. That's concerning to me. And then on top of that, with this new 17-game schedule thing, this season the AFC has one less home game.
Yeah.
So instead of 9 home games like last year, we have 8. So you're talking about the whole remainder of the year, the 15 more games after the first 2 weeks, we only have 6 home games. Like, you got to start hot, otherwise you're going to be in big trouble come end of the season.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's weird. It seems like the NFL schedule makers really like this Bills Titans thing that's been going on over the last couple of years. I think we played the Titans last year, like week 5 or week 4, or was it the year before that? But I feel
think
like
both. I think both. Yeah,
both. Yeah, we played the Titans early in the year, back-to-back seasons, and now we're doing it once again. So they seem to like what the Bills and the Titans got going on. And I am also wondering when we'll be ending up getting, do we play any teams in the? We have to play somebody in the AFC West eventually, right? I don't know how the schedule works, to be quite honest.
That's the Chiefs. Yeah, we get the Chiefs again in Arrowhead again, of course.
Okay. All right. Interesting. So I don't know. It definitely, especially like you alluded to early on in the season, if we're getting, I think a lot of people seem to be suspecting the Jets or the Dolphins. I don't honestly think either game is going to be easy, just in combination with, all the moves that both of those teams made this offseason, on top of the fact that, like you mentioned, it's early in the year. We have a hiccup early on like we did last season. It really could, especially this season. It's a highly anticipated season in terms of competitiveness. And, there's really no room for error if everything pans out the way everybody's kind of expecting it to, right? So, if we drop a game or two that we're not supposed to, that could bode very poorly for not only like a top seed chance, but hell, I mean, if things really don't go well, which I'm not going to, of course, wish into existence, but I mean, that could be costing us a playoff spot down the road as well. I mean, there was a point during last season where, I mean, we were sitting there thinking like, okay, it's kind of getting dangerously close for our own liking here.
Yeah, I do think like one benefit, like sneaky benefit this year to an early game against like a division rival is like in years past, right? Everyone knew, okay, Brian Daboll's a coach. This is going to be his game plan. We know how to kind of, I guess, game plan against it. It doesn't mean the game plan would work, but people had an idea. Now with Ken Dorsey, I don't even think Bills fans really have an idea. Like we still suspect like Josh Allen's going to be the focus of everything. Maybe sprinkle a little bit more like the screen game in now that we have James Cook. But opposing teams don't really know what Ken Dorsey's going to do when it comes to play calling because no one's ever seen it. So I do think that kind of gives us a little bit of a leg up maybe in the early contest. But the same thing applies to, the other teams in the division as well. Like right now, the Patriots don't even have an offensive coordinator. So God only knows what they're going to do from the play calling standpoint. So it's going to be interesting to see what that week 1 game is. Now that we know Tennessee's week 2, I mean, that's not going to be an easy game, but no game this year is going to be easy because the Bills can't sneak up on anybody.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, I'd like to think that we start off on a better foot this year, but I mean, each game, the term any given week or any given Sunday, it applied more to any season. Last year it was so prevalent every single week. Somebody was losing that shouldn't have been losing. And it seems like that's probably going to start to be a theme in the NFL. And, that's a whole nother tangent that we can open up, on a later date. But moving on, on this kind of topic, now that the Bills are playing the Titans, and I kind of alluded to the fact that the schedule makers seem to like that matchup. Is that the first question I have? I believe it is. Hold on. I'm still learning StreamYard. Okay. Who would you consider to be the Bills' rival right now, in your personal opinion?
Biggest rival right now?
Yeah.
I mean, I still got to go Kansas City. And the reason I say that is like because they've kicked us out of the playoffs 2 years in a row. So until we kind of get by them, I have to have them as our biggest rival. But saying that, I'm not confident we see them in the playoffs. I do think that Mahomes still is going to be good. I know that like without Tyreek Hill, who knows? But I still think they're going to do enough to be competitive. But that division's such a mess. Like it's so dominant. The Broncos could come out on top, the Raiders, the Chargers, the Chiefs. So there's a chance like the Bills might not even see the Chiefs in the playoffs. But until I see the Bills, like, yeah, we might beat them in the regular season again this year. Let's say that happens. They're still the biggest rival to me because at the end of the day, the biggest game that we've played the past 2 years has been the last game of the season where we couldn't get by them. So that to me, they're the biggest rival.
Yeah, and I would agree. It's especially just because of the way things ended last year. And of course, after the AFC Championship game in 2020 as well. It's hard to say anyone else, but, the Titans, I think, if it weren't for the extreme circumstances with the Chiefs, the Titans are a pretty damn close second. I mean, it seems like, I think, at least from my point of view, I think Bills fans have a little bit more bad blood towards Tennessee Titans fans, or at least the Tennessee Titans, than, necessarily the Kansas City Chiefs, just because I know everybody was freaking out when they tried the, Music City Miracle repeat type of thing on the kickoff against us last year. So I think there's a little bit more hatred in the water when it comes to the Titans instead of the Chiefs, because at the end of the day, we shot ourselves in the foot when it came to the Chiefs. They really didn't do anything to deserve that win, of course. But I almost personally hate the Chiefs just because of they ended up flipping with the Patriots to take Trent McDuffie, and Trent McDuffie was the guy that I wanted to fall to the Bills. And it seemed like he was actually going to get there. Like it seemed like a stretch pre-draft that, a guy like Trent McDuffie, because he was being considered, in the upper echelon of corners. It was like tier 1 with, Sauce Gardner and Derek Stingley. And then Trent McDuffie was kind of in like this weird middle tier. And then, of course, Andrew Booth started to fall. So he was kind of like alone in this tier, in my opinion. And he started to fall. And I'm like, oh, my God, this is actually possible. And then the Chiefs, of all teams, go up to 21 with the Patriots and steal them. So that for me was just extra fuel. But I think I have to agree with you. Until we move by the Kansas City Chiefs and we kind of get over that hump against them, they got to be the rival, right?
Yeah. Yeah, it's funny you bring up the Chiefs hop, and I did see a little bit of a conspiracy theory, and I didn't read too much into it, but there was some idea that the Chiefs, the Patriots, and the Cowboys were all colluding to keep a corner away from the Bills. I don't believe that for a second, but there was some weird things that were happening that day where it was almost like, could this be happening? It didn't at the end of the day. The Bills got their guy, but you also brought up Andrew Booth. Like, he was the guy I wanted. I just thought he fit the Bills best, but I had Booth and Elam as my 1A, 1B at that spot. But I'm with you too, McDuffie. Like, if he had fallen, McDuffie was the guy I wanted. I just didn't see him getting there,
Right. Yeah, totally. And unfortunately, Andrew Booth, I think he probably would have been my choice over Elam, but I think he was dealing with a sports hernia, if I'm not mistaken.
correct.
So he's got something going on. So I hope he's able to figure that out. But I think he would have been, had that been not part of the equation, I think I would have been going with Andrew Booth personally over Kyrie Elam. But I mean, I'm still happy with Elam, of course. But I mean, on your conspiracy topic, we've heard a lot of crazy shit going down this offseason. So I mean, nothing is out of the realm of possibility.
No.
Not especially with that whole Tom Brady thing with the Dolphins. As far as I know, that's been confirmed true. It just ended up blowing up. I mean, I could be wrong, but it sounded like that was actually a thing.
Yeah, I thought it sounded like it was, and it sounded like it was almost confirmed to be the case, which to me, that it's illegal. Like, that's collusion, right? And that's like backdoor dealing, and I forgot all the other terminology the NFL uses, but that is not allowed. So I don't know if that was proven true. It's like, okay, what's the punishment then? I wouldn't expect one, but who knows?
No, that's a good point. And it's like, I don't even know if Stephen Ross, granted, I'm not sure if anything necessarily has come of the Brian Flores lawsuit yet. Like, I think that's still in progress. But I mean, that guy is basically confirmed, scumbag to some capacity. He's dealing backdoor with Tom Brady. He's trying to convince Brian Flores to lose games. It's like, this guy's obviously relatively shady. There's a lot of different reports coming out about him doing some very, what's the word? Black web type of dealing, dark web type of dealing. So it's like, who knows? Like, if that was actually confirmed, and the funny part is, the other conspiracy theory is that Bill Belichick sent that text on purpose, acted like it was an accident to blow it all up. So
I mean, I believe that one. I believe, like, I do think Bill Belichick's like this evil genius. So I would find it hard to fathom that he just kind of messed up the Brian. Like, he meant to send that to Brian Dable and accidentally send it to Flores. It seems too like stupid for somebody of his caliber to do. So I'm full on board on that conspiracy theory.
Yeah, I mean, that's a very fair point. I mean, Bill Belichick, out of all people, he seems to have his X's and O's constantly in line, at least from an outside perspective. You'd think he wouldn't be screwing something like that up unless he knew it would benefit him in some sort of favor. But back on the original point, nothing's out of the question when it comes to the NFL and any of this type of shit going on. I mean, who knows? But the second question that I have for you, and this was something that I saw, credit to the Bills guys, the Air Raid Hour, they tweeted out over under 4.5 primetime games for the Bills. I saw you say smash the over.
Oh, yeah.
And my question to you, to go on top of this is that, do you think, like I said, my knowledge of the scheduling is still kind of cloudy at the moment. Could this be under just because of the AFC West matchups, and they're going to want to get as many of those in primetime windows as they can?
Yeah, I mean, that's a possibility. I just like, now that I know that the Titans is a primetime game, right? Now that I'm sure of that kind of pushed me for sure over the top. I do think they're going to love like Kansas City against the Chargers. Like, that's going to be a huge, like, both games they're going to want. That whole division is going to get a ton of primetimes. But in saying all that, I do think that Josh Allen is this monster draw now after that playoff game. Like, people look at that game with him and Mahomes just going back and forth and just want to see like the slugfest. So if you can put him up against, Matthew Stafford and Cooper Kupp on primetime, that'll be the Rams-Bills will be a primetime game. The Bills play the Packers this year too. Like, Aaron Rodgers against Josh Allen seems awesome. And then I really do think the Patriots and the Dolphins, I think in those 4 games, at least 2 of them have to be primetime, just because Patriots-Bills has to be. And if the Dolphins really are this team that some people think are going to compete with the Bills, why wouldn't you want a primetime game there? And the last part I'll throw at it too is like later in the season, they have like the weird flex dates. There's like two dates where they take like 6 games and they say, okay, we're going to flex a few of these. We don't know which ones, but we're going to flex some. So I see that probably being one of the Dolphins games, which wouldn't be initially a primetime game, which would turn into one. So at the end of the season, I think Buffalo sees 5 primetime games at least before the playoffs hit.
That would be nuts. And, to your point, if the Miami Dolphins do turn out, I mean, they really could be not giving us a run for our money, but definitely, making the game a bit more entertaining than I'd say we've had with them in the past. I mean, we usually are just murdering them by God knows how many points, 30 plus points on average at this point. And it's getting ridiculous. So if they actually are able to, put this roster together, and everybody wants to see Tyreek Hill, he's I would put him up there in terms of entertainment value for the NFL. So they're definitely going to try and get his face out there to as many people as possible. So I do think that's also true, which I did not consider. So I do think it's going to hover right around 4 or 5.
Yeah.
I mean, that was a perfect line by the air raid hour. I mean, that line is probably about going to be what it is, 4 or 5.
Sure.
But I think I'll go with like what you said. I'm going to say 4 are scheduled, and then if the 5th comes in, it'll be because of the flex.
Yeah, I mean, it's I would, even without the flex, I'd probably say, I mean, we're talking, we're nickel and diamond here, right? We're talking about 4 or 5. I'll say even without the flex, give me 5, with the flex 6. But I could see 4 too. Who knows?
Yeah, I mean, well, we will see. I mean, it comes out Thursday, right? I mean,
I believe so. Yeah,
comes out Thursday, so we have that to look forward to. The NFL will market that for the next 2.5 weeks, so at least we have that coming for us. And the third Q&A question that I have for you, speaking of the AFC West, who do you predict to win the AFC West?
Yeah, I'm going Chargers. I think the Chargers could have won it last year had it not been for Brandon Staley just being a maniac, like against the Chiefs, going for it on every single 4th down. If he just plays normal football, the Chargers win that division or in the playoffs, and the Chiefs actually might not even make the playoffs. I'd have to go back and look how that schedule will work out. But this year, like, they just got better everywhere across the board. Like, their offensive line got better. Like, I think they might have brought in another skill player. There's rumors Jarvis Landry may be going there. Their defense looks stacked now. I mean, the Chargers are pretty damn good. So as long as Justin Herbert keeps ascending, like if he just stays the same, I don't really know if they can make noise in that division. But if he keeps ascending the way he should, I got the Chargers winning that division. And that puts me in this weird spot with the Chiefs where, I mean, honestly, I could see them finishing 4th. I don't think that happens, but it's going to be hard for them to come out of that division alive this year.
Oh yeah. And I mean, it's so talent. Obviously the talent level is through the roof in that division, and the Chargers' biggest thing, it's really been their defense and their secondary. I mean, once Derwin James got hurt, I mean, they literally couldn't stop. They couldn't stop anything. Derwin James was the backbone to that entire defense. So if he's able to stay healthy, they got J.C. Jackson. I know that who's that second-year corner that they're going to have this year? It's some kid's son or some dude's son. I can't remember his name off the top of my head.
Yeah. Trying to pull up their depth chart quick. Yeah, they're just again, they're just all across the board. Just pulled it. Asante Samuel.
Samuel, yes. I mean, they have the pieces. And then, of course, Khalil Mack, if he's able to stay on the field. I mean, they really put together, in my opinion, the most talented roster in the NFL. I think, I mean, having superstars like that, they might not have the most depth out of anybody, but it definitely is one of the most talented. If they could stay on the field, it's going to be scary, especially down the stretch. If, Joey Bosa and Khalil Mack are able to get on the same page. So, God forbid anybody's going to run into that team when they get hot. I was even arguing that I might even rather play the Los Angeles Chargers in Buffalo. This is kind of rewinding a little bit last year because I knew, the weather wasn't going to be good. They're a West Coast team traveling. I just figured I would almost rather play them after the way things had gone with the Patriots for us throughout the regular season. I was trying to form that argument. I didn't care, to be honest, at the end of the day, because I was confident either way. But I mean, I just thought the Patriots, they're used to us. They know what they could do to beat us, give themselves their best opportunity. And I think the Chargers, being so inexperienced in that situation, I think it would have, kind of went similar to how it went with the Patriots, to be honest.
Yeah, I was actually on the air raid hour before that game, and I said on a live show that's recorded, like I was like, "There's no way the Bills blow them out. They're not going to blow out the Patriots, but I'm confident they're going to win the game. I just can't see Bill Belichick getting blown out in the playoffs in the 3rd game of the season against the same team." Yeah. And then lo and behold, the game started, and right away I was like, "Oh, I'm wrong," and I'm very happy I'm wrong.
Yeah, I mean, I was taken aback. I mean, after the way the first game went against them, I was ready to
Mhm.
rip my hair out and jump off a roof. I mean, that was one of the most frustrating football games I've
Oh,
watched in a very long period of time. And after the second game, I felt a little bit more comfortable against them. But you just never know what kind of Bills team, especially last year, was going to show up. And then you
mhm.
just you know what to expect with the Patriots. With Mac Jones, his limitations, and then that defense usually is relatively stout, and they come well prepared. But it just looked like the Buffalo Bills were on the same page and playing their best football, of course. So
Oh, yeah.
that boded well for us. But moving on, that would be your option. You said the Los Angeles Chargers. I didn't throw in who I would
Correct.
win or who I'd take. I think I would probably take the Chargers as well, but I do think the Raiders are definitely going to be in that mix. I'm a big Derek
Yeah.
Carr fan. I'll get to that in a little bit.
I like Derek Carr, and I do think that they're gonna oddly enough fly under the radar. Like I think the majority of people are probably gonna put them fourth. They could win the whole thing, and I wouldn't be surprised by it.
Oh yeah, I mean, everybody's too hesitant to put the Chiefs last right now, right?
Yeah.
And I think the Broncos, the way I've been seeing them viewed, and in my opinion, I think this year they struggle. I think they'll end up
Mm,
being an 8-9 team, trying to figure things
okay.
out. So I think over the next couple of years they'll truly become their final form, and Russell Wilson will get
Mhm.
comfortable there. But this year they'll struggle. So I think it'll be. I honestly think Broncos finish last. I think the Chiefs will be third. And then the Raiders and the Chargers will probably be a toss-up for the top spot. But, I
Yeah.
mean, I think, both of those teams are obviously so much more talented. All three of those teams are so much more talented than what the Chiefs have right now. But it's like nobody can dethrone the Chiefs until we see it with our own eyes.
For
So
sure.
with you, like you said, you have the Chargers. I'm going to take the Chargers as well, but the Raiders are definitely a close second.
Cool.
All right. So now we're going to move into the hot take. I'm not sure if you came prepared with one.
Yeah,
But
I got one.
All right, perfect. So if you want to start, knock your socks off.
Yeah. So I've been kind of outspoken about this. I got the Jaguars making the playoffs and having a home game. I
Wow.
I know this is a really hot one. Now, there's a
Wow.
couple parts to this. I don't think the Jaguars are a good football team. I just don't think any team in the AFC South is very good. And I know people, are now saying like, "Oh, what about the Colts? Like the Colts were right there last year. They blew out the Bills. They got Matt Ryan." Well, yeah, but then in a winning game, they lost to the Jaguars. And the Jaguars spent a ridiculous amount of money this year. If you look at that depth chart that the Jaguars put together, it might not be, beautiful, but it's good. It's sneaky good. And I think they have like all these weird little pieces where they're going to be competitive. I could see them finding a way to go 9-8, maybe 10-7. And if they can get to 9-8, 10-7, that might be enough to win that division. So I have them winning the AFC South and then going on to host a playoff game against God, whoever the first wild card is, will play them.
Wow, that's a hot one. I wasn't sure
Yeah.
what I was expecting, but my God, that's about as hot as it's going to get. Oh
Mhm.
wow. I mean, in this conference, I think absolutely any other season, I think 10 wins easily is a playoff ticket punch 10 out of 10 times. But this year it's like, I think there will be at least one team that hits 10 wins that misses out. If that's the
Mhm.
Jaguars, I mean, God bless them. I would be fine. If I was a Jaguars fan, my team hit 10 wins and, we did just slightly miss the playoffs because of outside circumstances, I'd be happy as hell. I mean, there's probably relatively limited expectations when it comes to the Jaguars going to this year. I don't know what to expect from Doug Peterson. To be honest, I
Sure.
think he's interesting when it comes to his judgment. He was really, I think hot and cold when it came to the quarterback situation. He was, throwing in Jalen Hurts every once in a while when Carson Wentz started to struggle, but he never really seemed to be able to set his mind straight. So it kind of makes me question his judgment when it comes to the Jacksonville Jaguars now that he's got the reins over there. But it's got to be better than Urban Meyer, so it doesn't get much worse than that. So as long as he's able to have his best players on the field, which I think he's at least smart enough to do, and Urban Meyer wasn't, I think, it could be a sneaky hot take. I guess the only reason, my biggest disagreement is that I'm a Colts, not a Colts fan, but I really think they're going to be the truth. Like I'm terrified of the Colts, and I want nothing to do with the Colts.
Yeah, I mean, if Matt Ryan can kind of regain his form of 3-4 years ago, then they'll be sneaky good too. I mean, and I'll throw one last thing in there with the Jaguars to kind of even make the take hotter. I don't like Trevor Lawrence. I don't think he's a good quarterback. I don't think he will be a good quarterback in the NFL. It's possible he will be decent, but I watched him last year a few times, and I know that he was on a bad football team, but Josh Allen was on a bad football team his rookie season. And I saw a lot more from Josh his rookie season than I did from Trevor Lawrence, who was supposed to be the second coming and the best quarterback prospect since Andrew Luck. So I don't like Trevor Lawrence. I still think that this team can find a way to win that division.
Wow. I mean, that is really hot. So in your mind, what does, if not Trevor Lawrence, what's going to be the driving force that gets him there?
So I got a couple things. I think their defense is really good. So they got, and I have the depth chart up, so it's not just like I memorize all these names, but I brought it up for a reason. They got the linebacker from the Falcons, a butcher's name, but Oluokun. He was had like nearly
or something.
Nearly 200 tackles last year. They got Fadukasi, the D tackle from the Jets, who was one of the best run stopping guys. And then on top of that, they drafted Devin Lloyd, who was largely considered the best linebacker in the draft. They got Trevon Walker in the first overall pick. They're going to bring back Travis Etienne, who didn't even play a snap last year. So if he really is that kind of like freak of a weapon, kind of not Deebo Samuel-esque, but you could play him at receiver, you could play him in the backfield, you can move him around. I think that they can put up enough points just because of like the speed and the decent talent they have. They don't have great talent. Christian Kirk's super overpaid. Marvin Jones is decent. Zay Jones is decent. Zay Jones is not decent. He's bottom of the barrel. But Evan Ingram's decent. Dan Arnold, like they're just decent everywhere. And to me, that's just enough in a bad division. I'm not high on the Titans. I'm probably higher on the Texans than the Titans. I like Davis Mills a lot. The Colts are the biggest challenge there, though. Like, yeah, I could see the Colts run away with it, but I'm just not sold on Matt Ryan at all.
Yeah, I understand that. I mean, I was as high as can be on Carson Wentz for the Colts going into last year. I mean, it's hard to screw up a situation like that. I mean, it's the easiest job in football in my mind when it comes to the quarterbacking position. And I mean, the guy, he was not as good as he should have been. So I'm going through the same sort of cycle when it comes to the Colts. I'm expecting Matt Ryan to be able to step in, going from a pretty piss poor situation to the best in football, and him to be able to adjust and do relatively well, but that's no slam dunk. So, I mean, that pretty much leaves the door open for anybody. I also am not very high on the Titans. I mean, I thought Ryan Tannehill was the only chance that guy has is when AJ Brown's on his field, and he's no longer going to be. I mean, he's literally like, he's a top 10 quarterback in my mind, so long that AJ Brown is playing. But when he's not, I mean, Ryan Tannehill is as pedestrian as it gets. And I mean, Treylon Burks is probably going to be decent, but he's not going to be AJ Brown. So you probably kiss their playoff hopes goodbye. And their defense, their secondary could be all right, but nothing special to carry them there, especially in this conference. And then, the Texans, I'm also a Davis Mills guy. I really like them. I'm very happy that the Texans see potential to where they're giving him a chance. They're not doing exactly what the Dolphins did, giving Tua every single weapon to see if he actually can do it, but they're giving him enough to see what they truly have. And I'm glad that they're not just completely throwing him out the back door and just kind of forgetting about him, because he showed enough promise in my mind.
Yeah. I mean, the crazy thing is there's a realm of possibility. Like there's a an alternate universe. Maybe it's this universe where Davis Mills is the best quarterback out of that draft. I don't know if that's going to be the case, because he's going to have to beat out Mac Jones, Trevor Lawrence, Zach Wilson, Trey Lance, all those guys. But he was good last year in arguably the worst situation in all of football. Like the Texans were an absolute mess last year. I mean, maybe the Texans and Jaguars equally a mess, but he had nothing. I mean, he had Brandon Cooks. Outside of Brandon Cooks, there's nothing on that team.
Yeah, and he was able to put together, I mean, especially for the situation, he was thrown in. Tyrod Taylor started off hot. Then I think he hurt his hamstring, and he gets thrown in his second starts against us in a rain game. It was rainy, slippery, and the dude throws like 5 interceptions and like 80 total yards and gets just completely demolished against the top defense. And it's like, that's got to be demoralizing for a kid just stepping in, but he was able to fight. He fought adversity, and he's not given enough credit at all. And, for a guy that, you were mentioning you're not so high on Trevor Lawrence, I'm still on the fence about him. But I mean, for, comparing Trevor Lawrence and his expectations to Davis Mills and his expectations, I mean, Davis Mills blew his away. And Trevor Lawrence is still trying to convince people that he's that generational prospect that he was drafted to be. So, I mean, who knows? I really don't think it's out of the realm of possibility that Davis Mills does end up being, if not the best, then at least the second best quarterback out of that draft.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right, so that would move me into, if that's the last thing you got to say on your Jags hot take, because that one's hot. That was hot.
Yeah, I was trying to give you a hot one. That's the hottest one I got. Yep.
All right, that was pretty damn good. But mine definitely isn't going to top that, but I think it's considerably hot. I think Derek Carr is better slightly than Joe Burrow. I know I would probably get crucified for saying this to a lot of people, but I mean, I think there's a solid argument for it. I mean, Joe Burrow, in my mind, is one of the most over-amplified quarterbacks in the NFL in the sense that his weapons, they help a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And that's not to discredit him, but, I mean, Derek Carr, his best weapon was Hunter Renfrow, and, God willing, he was very good. But, I mean, he had Darren Waller for 11 games, Hunter Renfrow, and Zay Jones. I mean, for the love of God, his best deep threat receiver had some off-the-field issues a quarter of the way through the year. I mean, this dude fought through so much and did so much with the bare minimum. And, of course, Joe Burrow had a fantastic season too, but the situations are so drastically different and they put up such similar numbers. I mean, I just don't see how people put Joe Burrow up on this pedestal and then Derek Carr's like 14, 15 in some people's minds.
Yeah, I don't know. I haven't really thought about comparing Derek Carr to Joe Burrow, but I'm not high on Joe Burrow at all. I think he's good. I think he's very accurate, but I think it helps when you have Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, and Tyler Boyd. Like that trio of wide receivers was the best in the NFL, and Jamar Chase might be that generational talent at wide receiver. Like he does freakish things. So especially like when I watched the Super Bowl, the Rams game, I didn't see anything from Joe Burrow where it was like, oh, he can will them to a win. Like he's good enough to win the Super Bowl. He'll probably win one at some point in his career, but I don't see something like let's take Josh Allen, for instance. He can will his team to victory even when the Bills end up losing said game. Like you go to that Chiefs game, there was fourth down plays where Josh was under pressure, doing everything and anything. I just didn't see anything similar with Burrow. And then you bring up Derek Carr. Derek Carr has had no weapons basically his entire career, and yet is always competitive and always good. I don't know where the idea came. Like there were people that just wanted to get rid of Derek Carr. Like the Raiders should trade him. He sucks. I don't know. I don't get that. I've always thought he's good. Derek Carr better than Joe Burrow. I kind of like it. I could see that being true.
It's in my mind, I have Derek Carr at 9 and Joe Burrow at 10 if I were to list the 10 quarterbacks. So it's like I'm not out here trying to tell people that Derek Carr is a top 5 quarterback. I'm not trying to preach to this non-existent choir that Derek Carr is the godsend and Joe Burrow's, was carried by, the best weaponry in the last decade. But I mean, they're comparable and people don't want to admit that. And it's so frustrating to me. And I've had this argument so many times over the last 2 weeks now. I've been posting on TikTok about it. I've been arguing with my friends. Like I've put together this massive just body of work favoring the fact that Derek Carr in my mind is comparable and better. And then, as you mentioned, Joe Burrow didn't do anything to will his team to a win in really any circumstance. And that was one of the points that I was making when, not trying to degrade Joe Burrow, but definitely to pull him down from, the sky, which everybody holds him at, with 1 minute and 45 seconds left in the game. And, it depends on how much you value this kind of statistic. But against the Tennessee Titans, under 2 minutes left, the Cincinnati Bengals had 33.9% chance to win. Under 2 minutes, I mean, I'd like to know how many teams have a less than 35% chance to win under 2 minutes and they still end up winning. I mean, I can't imagine there's many teams where that happens very often. Sure. And then against the Chiefs, I mean, at halftime, I have the number right here. They had a 5.2% chance to win right before half. I mean, Joe Burrow didn't do anything spectacular to will that team back in the game. He continued to play football, and Patrick Mahomes didn't. I mean, and then 153 left in the game, the Bengals had a 30% chance to win. So their chances, even at the end of the game, when Patrick Mahomes had second down, 10 yards from the end zone, down by 3, it's like the Bengals really, I mean, they should not have come out of 2 games in my mind in that postseason. And in my opinion, the Bengals defense was what really, hauled them through the postseason. I mean, like I mentioned, they had the pick against Ryan Tannehill, at that point that I was mentioning when they had a 33.9% chance to win. They picked off Ryan Tannehill. Joe Burrow hits Jamar Chase for 15 yards, and one of the best kickers in football out of nowhere kicks an easy 40-yarder, and they win the game, right? And then, of course, against the Kansas City Chiefs, Like I said, Patrick Mahomes is 10 yards out of the end zone, and they hold him to 3, right? And then in overtime, the Chiefs have the ball, and they stop him again to start the overtime period. So it's like, in my mind, Joe Burrow has not done enough to solidify him as this, this godsend. I think he's going to be, very good, very, very good, but I don't see this ceiling that everybody does. I mean, I had people tell me that, Joe Burrow's, tier 1. I've had people tell me Joe Burrow's close to Justin Herbert. It's like, I don't view Justin Herbert or Joe Burrow on the same tier at all. Like, I think Justin Herbert's closer to Josh Allen than Joe Burrow is to Justin Herbert. I don't know if that's crazy to say, but yeah, I have a lot more, but I'm not going to bore you to death.
No, I mean, the one thing, like, with Joe Burrow, and kind of you were kind of alluding to this point a little bit, like, one thing that drives me crazy is the debate I've had to deal with this offseason, that is people saying, well, Joe Burrow's gotten further than Josh Allen's ever gotten in the playoffs, so Joe Burrow's better. I'm like, that argument makes no sense. Joe Burrow had 5 passing touchdowns in 4 games in the playoffs this year. 5. Josh had 5 in 1 game. Like, what are we doing? Don't tell me that Joe Burrow got his team to the – like, Josh literally got his team past the Chiefs essentially 3 separate times. His defense just fell apart. So it's ultimately these wins and losses and the teams getting further than others. It's a team sport for a reason, and I just can't deal with people saying, like, oh, well, he got further, so he's better. No, Joe Burrow's not better than Josh Allen right now. That doesn't mean he couldn't one day be. I don't think he ever will be, but just because he made the Super Bowl and lost in the Super Bowl doesn't make him better than Josh, who has yet to make it to the Super Bowl.
Yeah, and that's how, that's the big argument that people have, when I bring up Derek Carr, Joe Burrow, everybody's like, well, Derek Carr's got like 1 postseason win in his entire career. Well, yeah, Derek Carr has had, at best, a 20th ranked defense throughout his entire career. Has had Hunter Renfrow as his best weapon over the last, at least last season. And the year before that, Darren Waller was decent, or he was still good, but you get my point. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, this argument I could go on and on about. I even apparently I also found this out. The Cincinnati Bengals, and Joe Burrow specifically, was the only quarterback in football to have 3 receivers over 800 yards, 2 of which went over 1,000, and then a running back as well have over 1,000 yards rushing. And he had, Joe Mixon had 1,200 yards rushing. So it's like, I mean, this guy, granted, his offensive line wasn't great. Derek Carr's offensive line was equally, if not even worse. So it's like, I don't know. We got to start pulling Joe Burrow down from the clouds where everybody holds him at, because it's getting out of hand. And I really think the Bengals are going to miss the postseason, but I feel like that's not as hot as a lot of people would probably say. What do you think about that one?
I actually agree with that. I got the Ravens winning that division.
Same here. Yeah, I think the Ravens, if the Ravens were healthy last year, I don't think the Bengals run happens, to be honest.
No,
I mean, the Bengals were a beneficiary of a Cleveland Browns roster that was, being just completely demoralized by Baker Mayfield and his, lacking ability to play the quarterback position. And then the Ravens, of course, who they couldn't stay healthy, and yet they were still competing. I mean, the Ravens were playing with third stringers at almost, 6 or 7 different positions, and they were competing with Aaron Rodgers and the Green Bay Packers until the final play of the game. It's like, this team is so well coached and just so fundamentally sound that, that was where they were able to be at. And now going into next year, if they're able to stay healthy this time around, I really think they're going to take that division easily. Even if Deshaun Watson doesn't get suspended for any amount of games, I still think they're probably the best team in that division, just because of how well they're coached.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. Like, as long as Lamar's healthy and he at least has a running back. I mean, the one thing with the Ravens, they don't have a receiver on that roster right now. They need somebody in a bad way. Like, I could see Lamar getting worked up and being like, I can't even play for you guys this year. Like, all I have is Mark Andrews to throw the football to. But I mean, as long as Lamar plays and they maybe find one more receiver, like bring Jarvis Landry in or something, that team, they're the best team in that division.
I absolutely think so too. And with that being said, since they did trade away Marquise Brown, do you think that the Ravens had, without getting a receiver, do you still think they had one of the better, or, maybe even the best draft in your mind, or, does that downgrade it?
So they had like some good, like they got Kyle Hamilton right in the first. And then I can't remember the names of the guys I got, but it was always like, oh, there's a hit, there's another hit, there's another hit. And they just had a really good draft. Tyler Lindenbaum, did they take him too? The center?
Yes, they did at 25.
Yeah, so that was just those 2 picks alone are great. But when I look at it, I'm like, you guys don't have a receiver on your roster. Like, I don't know what their plan is there. Like, I get they always go best pick available, but there's a point where it's like, okay, we need to stretch for something because we are a complete mess at one position group. And they just never did. So on paper, great draft. But in reality, I'm like, you guys you have a real problem on your roster.
Yeah, and that's a fair point because I made a video like I think at some point last week, and I had the Ravens, in my opinion, as the best draft. I mean, like you said, it was hit after hit after hit. They didn't miss. And somebody pointed out like, they don't have a receiver on the roster, and I'm like, oh yeah, they did kind of trade away their number one receiver and didn't replace him. And I didn't really think about that. And I guess if you factor that in, it's hard to say they had a perfect draft because prior to that being brought to my attention, I did think they had the perfect draft, behind, in front of the Jets, even, who I thought had a very good draft too. The Ravens were A1, and, without that top receiver, I'm not sure if they think Rashad Bateman can be that guy, which I don't think is an awful thought, but you still need help. I mean, Willie Snead, if he's even still there, is not going to be the answer. I mean, they need something badly. But yeah, that's my hot take. Derek Carr over Joe Burrow, and I mean, I could go on about that for hours.
That's a good one. That's one though I might agree with. So
trust me, if you ever need some information, I got the whole book. To back up your take. All right, so that brings us into the final portion of the show. We got the quiz game. This is the most, the highly anticipated part, at least in my mind. I have a very good time doing this. So if you're not too familiar with it, for those watching, this is how the quiz game works. There are 5 NFL questions. The question categories include recent events, stats, history, draft, and football IQ. You can choose easy, medium, and hard for each question. The easy is 10 points, medium's 20, hard is 30 points, 15 seconds per question, but I'm relatively lenient about that. And you get the fight to have your name etched on the leaderboards. Right now, we have Jake Jordan, if you're familiar with him, top of the leaderboards at 60 points. He set that in week 2. So you are the 5th guest on The Cave, and you have an opportunity to take the top spot. Bear with me. I'm still trying to wrinkle it out, and it's hard to kind of gauge what questions are easy and medium and hard. Like, I try my best, so hopefully it's, pretty on pace. All right, so let's start. Let's kick it right off. We have the recent events question. Do you want the easy, the medium, or the hard question?
Oh, boy. All right, let's go medium. I'm going to stick with medium for most of this, unless I need to move up or down.
All right, so the medium question is, kind of already talked about it, but which wide receivers were traded in the first round of the 2022 NFL draft?
A.J. Brown and Hollywood Brown.
That would be correct. Those are the 2 receivers that were traded. That probably was a little easy, wasn't it? But that's all right. You get 20 points right on the board right off the bat. It's a good start. Not a bad start. Most people have been going easy because some of my questions have been too hard. So you might be a beneficiary of the easier quiz. No, I'm lying. All right. Question number 2. We have the stats question. Do you want the easy, the medium, or the hard question for the stats here?
Hit me with medium again.
All right. This is a good one. Who had more receptions last season, Emmanuel Sanders or Devin Singletary?
Oh, boy. That is one I don't know off the top of my head. Man, I'm gonna go Emmanuel Sanders.
You're right. It was Emmanuel Sanders. You got it. Woo. Emmanuel Sanders had 42. Devin Singletary had 40.
Oh my goodness. I did not realize how close that was.
I was kind of hoping that, throwing it in the medium category would make people think Devin. You almost said Devin like 2 or 3 times too.
I came real close there, yeah.
But yes, there you go. It was Emmanuel Sanders. Just barely, though. I mean, Devin Singletary got active at the end of the year. Once Emmanuel Sanders slowed down, it was like, the dude became almost irrelevant in our offense near the end of the year.
Yeah.
All right. So that would be that. You already got 42 for 2. Pretty hot start right now. You're on pace to take that top spot. Knock on wood. All right. So the third question, we have the history question. Do you want the easy, the medium, or the hard for the NFL history?
This I'm going to embarrass myself on, but let's go. Oh, boy. Let's go medium. I'll stick with medium.
Medium. Who is the only non-quarterback to have won the MVP award twice or more than once? Whoops.
Would that be – I can't remember Emmitt Smith?
It was not Emmitt Smith. Emmitt Smith did only win it once.
One time.
Jim Brown with the Cleveland Browns.
Oh, God, I should have known that one.
Back in the early days of primitive football, it was Jim Brown early on. I think he won the first 3. If I might, don't quote me on that, but he did win very often. He was the first MVP winner. That one I know for a fact.
Oh,
In
okay.
1957, he won the first one, and then he won a couple after that as well. But it was Jim Brown. Emmitt Smith did win, but he only won once. All right. Still 40 points. Still in a very good spot right now. For the next question, this is an NFL draft question. Not just this past season. It could be any draft. You want the easy, the medium, or the hard one?
Give me medium again. I'm staying with it.
Riding with the medium. All right. Medium question. Who is the last non-quarterback drafted first overall in the NFL draft?
The last non-quarterback?
Yep.
Drafted first overall?
Yep.
Tavon Walker.
Oh, yeah. That's right. Shit. Damn it. I wasn't considering the 2022 draft. You're right. Yeah, shit. You tricked me. You got my ass. You're right. It was Trayvon Walker. I was thinking Myles Garrett because he was drafted. He was the last non-quarterback technically in 2017.
I'm trying to think if I would have gotten to Myles Garrett if it hadn't been for that.
I didn't even remember. Oh, my God. I completely blundered. Well, there you go. You have tied the top spot. I didn't even think about that. I just tricked myself. And that's not the first time I've tricked myself with a question, funny enough.
I might have messed that up, too. I might have gone all the way back to, Jadeveon Clowney. He was a number one pick, too.
Yep.
I probably would have gone to him. Yeah.
What year was that? Was that 2014?
That was a while ago.
Yeah, that was a while ago.
Now I'm feeling old.
But yeah, there you go. 60 points on the board. Pretty damn good. So, last question. We have the football IQ question. This is just kind of like a rule type of question. So, you want the easy, the medium, or the hard?
I'm taking that top spot. Give me the easy.
All right. The easy question it is. What yard line is the ball spotted at for a kickoff?
After the. Oh boy, I'm gonna mess this one up now. Is it the? Give me a sec. 35.
It is the 35. You are correct. You get the top spot. Good shit. Right.
I had to do the math there.
You just killed it. I mean, you walked through this quiz relatively easily. You killed all the medium too. That was pretty damn good. Good job.
Cool.
Top spot at 70 points. I'm going to have to tweet that out. You're the new winner. Jake was holding it for a little bit too long. So It's good to see a new face at the top. You're going to have to do.
I'll have to brag to Jake too, just to piss him off. So.
Oh yeah, you definitely do. Because he definitely was on his high horse riding at the top there for a little bit too long. But there you go. All right. Awesome. So that would be wrapping up the last segment of the cave. I definitely would enjoy having conversation with you, Hansel. Is there anything else you want to add? We still have, we haven't been going for that long. So if there's any other things you want to add in.
Yeah, I mean, I guess the only thing I'll say, just in general about the Bills this year, I think I know the fan base is excited. I know that I'm freakishly excited. I don't know how I'm going to make it the next 4 months. That's just crazy. It's 4 months away, but this team, I've been watching football for a long time, watching it a little bit too in depth and going through rosters and stats and depth charts my whole entire life. I can honestly say it's been very rare I've seen a depth chart and a roster like the Bills have right now. This is a special group. This is the year. It has to be the year. I don't think that if they don't make it and they don't, win the whole thing this year, it's over and we're not going to win it. But man, this has got to be the year. It's got to be the year.
Yeah, and I mean it's really awesome, seeing how far we've come. Watching, the team throughout the drought and seeing, from Josh Allen's first season. I mean, I remember vividly watching Josh Allen in his rookie year and seeing, I'll never forget watching live the Charles Clay drop against the Dolphins. I'll never forget that. That play sticks in my mind. And every single time I think about Josh Allen or I see Josh Allen do something miraculous, I think back to that play and just how close he got. And he's been doing this kind of shit ever since he got in the NFL. And you said how Trevor Lawrence really hasn't shown anything like that. And for somebody that's supposed to be the next coming of Andrew Luck, he's not even come close to making, I would say, even a play close to that play that Josh Allen made his rookie year. So, I mean, it really is awesome to see the growth that this team has gone through. And I'm very, very excited as well. I think all Bills fans obviously should be. It's just unfortunate that, of course, all the other teams decide to gear up the same year we want to be revving up. It's of course, we can never have anything easy. But, I mean, it would be pretty damn awesome to be able to sit back and say, we won the Super Bowl, probably in one of the best conferences in football history. I mean, this AFC, the talent it's second to none.
Yeah, I mean the quarterback talent alone. Just if you looked at that, you're like, there's never been anything like this in a single conference. And then the teams themselves, like, it's going to be just a bloodbath in the AFC. And the team that comes out probably going to win the whole thing this year. I just don't see a team in the NFC that can compete with a lot of these AFC teams. Again, I was saying that last year too. Like, I think everyone was saying the winner of Chiefs Bills was the Super Bowl champ. And then the Chiefs drop to the Bengals, and then the Rams go on to win it. I do honestly believe if the Bills win that game, they win the Super Bowl, but we don't have to worry about that. We'll worry, this year once we get to the playoffs. I think this is the year. It's got to be.
I hope you're right. I'm not counting. I don't want to count any heads before they're hashed, but I mean, it seems like things are coming together so well at this point. And the Von Miller edition was the piece that I was before last season. I was like bashing my head against the table, like, please, pass rusher, please, please. And we went and addressed it in the draft, and I'm like, okay, fine. Everybody was like, telling me I'm a hater. I don't know what I'm talking about because we didn't go out and get a veteran. I'm like, you know what, whatever. I guess I'll live with it. And I'm just glad that, Brandon Beane has seemed to really round out his general manager tenure here. I think he's really done a good job of managing the future, but I did feel like prior to this offseason, he was a little too timid when it came to the win now. And when it came to the opportunity that we have in front of us, I felt like he wasn't taking advantage of it as much. But I mean, he certainly proved me wrong this offseason. This offseason specifically, I thought he put together a very well-rounded general manager tenure. I mean, he could retire after the season, and I would say he's been one of the best general managers the Bills have had in their entire franchise history. I mean, that's how good he's been for us.
Yeah, we needed the Super Bowl move last year. We needed that one move that was like, we're going to go get it. And as soon as I saw Von Miller pop up on my Twitter feed that the Bills signed him, I was like, that's the move. That's the move we needed. And man, I hope it pays off.
Yeah, same here. And it really seems like they're going to rally together this year. And that's the biggest thing. It's like this family brotherhood thing that they got going on. I mean, it's really what's going to be the driving factor going into this year. So I do hope you're right, but I'm going to temper my expectations just because we've experienced a tad bit too much of a break in our Bills careers here. But that will be wrapping it up. I appreciate everybody that did step in and tune in and leave a comment. I really appreciate you guys coming in. Thank you, Kim. Great show. I'll be at the game in LA. Oh, wow, you're going to the game in LA. Oh, that's going to be a good one against the Rams. Wow. But yeah, all right, so that will be all. Thank you guys for stopping in. Thank you, Hansel, for being on the show. It was a blast. So yeah, I mean, that will be wrapping it up, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace. Go Bills.
Peace. Go Bills.